I'm Edgar Duncan, also known as Smaz, and today I'll be reading Sea of Seals, my first completed book, which I finished in February 2009. The reason for reading the first chapter is because it is the anniversary of this book. Now, keep in mind that the writing of it is very much a product of its time, and I've developed immensely so since then. So, here's Sea of Seals. I hope you enjoy. Chapter 1. Bananas. There are many things in our world that cannot be explained, such as why bananas grow on trees, why the universe is eternal, and why we are even human. It's a good thing, then, that things can be explained in worlds that have no relation to our own in terms of race, in a completely different eternal universe with a completely different understanding of why bananas grow on trees. The planet Yarth. A distant planet in an ever-expanding universe in which the residents believe that they are the only planet with life itself. Yarth's inhabitants are complicated people with simple minds, with most delving on greed and aspire to become rich and perhaps become something more in their greedy lives. Yes, you've guessed it, exactly like humans. Indeed, this planet resides in a dimension unlike our own, but resembles the equivalent of Earth. Perhaps it is this simple greed that caused Smaz to steal the box in the first place, or even the greed of the king himself. Or perhaps it was that Smaz had recently become increasingly suspicious of the king's orders to him as a knight of the castle, and was only stealing the box so that he could lead the police group, running hot on his tail, to the king and shout out, "He did it!" to the king, in a false hope they would believe him. Or perhaps not everything can be answered after all. Even in this backwards reality in a different universe, in which people believe bananas grow because it's a banana's tree of excreting feces. Lovely. Dawn was approaching fast as Smaz swiftly rushed around a corner into a shadowed alley. He was huffing and panting from the sheer distance he had run, attempting to lose a police force that was after him. However, he didn't want to give up. He couldn't. Not now. The brilliant orange light was shining across the sky valiantly, only to be suppressed by the low altitude of fog which had recently congregated during the chase. Smaz rushed through a particularly thick blanket of the suffocating mist. At least, that's what it felt like to Smaz at the very moment. Looking up as he rushed to the end of this dark alley, shouts of the fuzz strong in behind his flowing cape, he could see the smudged pastel sun covered by the thick fog, peeking from behind a far-away silhouetted hill. This small beacon of light was what Smaz needed. And then the eclipse of shadowy malice occurred as three officers pounced out from in front of him, only meters away from the alley's mouth. His mind racing, Smaz turned his head behind him to see no more than 7 blue uniformed police officers running towards him, one with a pistol and the others with metal truncheons. There should have been 4 more, but they had been left behind long ago, their donut-infested bodies burning off more calories than they could handle. This was it. Smaz was trapped. There was no need to about-face. There was no need to turn back. He couldn't. Not because of the officers, but because he couldn't disobey the king's orders. He held the small box firm in his arms, flattened across his chest as he saw the 3 police officers in front slowly ascend towards him, a triumphant look upon their faces, knowing they had finally won the chase. This was the chance Smaz needed. As the middle officer made a lunge at the knight, Smaz jumped. Time seemed to elapse slowly. As he did so, one of the behind officers raised his pistol in slow motion, ready to fire at Smaz and bring him down. It took only milliseconds for Smaz to land his right foot on the policeman's back and spring himself upwards, but it felt more like minutes to him. If he didn't make this jump, he was a goner. Smiling as he propelled himself above the 2 officers in front, Smaz felt a rush of relief, joy, and almost an admittance that he still had what it took to be the king's most trusted knight, no matter how ludicrous his orders were. Then, 2 things hit Smaz at once. The first was a thought. The immediate thought was the recurring one that Smaz had become suspicious of the king. His bizarre orders recently had been cause of worry for the faithful knight, and he was beginning to question the king's motives in his mind. Killing? Theft and banana eating? It was unlike the king to order such things, especially one as atrocious as banana eating. The second thing that hit Smaz was a piercing bullet from the pistol's barrel from directly behind him. His current thoughts diminished within an instant as searing pain electrocuted its way through Smaz's right shoulder and down his arm. Sure enough, the bullet had connected and caused Smaz's right arm to go almost limp with pain. Any tension stung like crazy. He landed perfectly behind the 3 officers, the bullet wound not affecting his perfect landing, and immediately he whizzed off into the crowd of people, down the main cobbled street, the market workers busily preparing their stalls for the day. By the time the police looked, he was gone. Smaz fell to his knees, dropping the box in front of him on the lonely cobbled ground. He had stowed away in a shadowed alley to lay low until the police stopped looking. It was a good thing they were such slops, staying inside eating their salty snacks until the Emperor called them out. Yes, it was a sad time in which the country of Ivor was suffering a fate of 2 rulers, one ruling one side of the country and one ruling the other side. King Utah was the king of the southern half, and was generally known as Utah the Booter, since his kind nature was spoilt by his constant habit of kicking those who annoyed him onto the other side of the country as banishment. This darker side of him had more recently been showing, and the kindness increasingly felt more like a facade to Smaz. Emperor Pikul was who ruled the northern side in this age and time of 1609. This time has no relation to our own. Even the technology was more basic in some places and more advanced in others at the time. This time was full of piracy, rulers, and the poor. Most things were wooden or metal, and no plastic could be seen anywhere. Not even in the high-tech Emperor Pikul's fortress, which was renowned for its gadgetry and more modern life. However, he was a torturous ruler, and hated the company of others, wanting nothing but his life to himself. Oh, and power. Don't forget the power. As a result, he was disliked by many, and received much sniggering comments about his fully attired black armour he constantly wore in order to keep his body to himself. Smaz coughed from both exhaustion and from the blood that had formed in his mouth. He simply knelt there, as he attempted to control the searing pain in his right shoulder, only his left arm supporting his weight on the cobbled floor. He clenched his teeth together. Who knew that guns would be this nasty? They had only been invented not long ago by Emperor Pikul himself, and had already taken a shine to his forces. Then again, Smaz shouldn't have been so surprised to see them in use. The police force was owned by the Emperor, and the king had no power over them. It was amusing to even think that the police could technically arrest the king, but it would never happen. He looked up, his left eye closed from the pain. There was the box, made of pinewood and varnished to perfection. Had the fog been thinner, perhaps Smaz could have seen some sunlight reflect off of it and into his furry face on the box's lid. He pulled himself up to the box with hefty might with just his left arm and clenched his teeth further. He finally was up to the box. Dust from the cobbled floor pattered against his dark purple trousers. He could faintly see his reflection in the beautifully crafted black varnished box. The intricate design fascinated Smaz. He wondered why the king would want such a small item. Studying his reflection, he hobbled up and leant against the brick and wooden wall to his left, some wooden fruit crates below him. He could faintly make out his pale white face and his long muzzle. Amusing. This world saw many anthropomorphic creatures from 2 main species, Quiotes and Phais. Smaz was a Quiote, a strange creature who bore long muzzles, very long and thin ears at the top of their heads, and a handy tail. Quiotes usually had 2 colours of fur too. Smaz's face colour was that of white, as was his scruffy tail, which stuck out from beneath his crimson cape. He checked his reflection through a squinted eye, trying to get better detail on whether he was bleeding anywhere else. He saw his grey, fluffy fur from his torso, not wearing anything on the top half of his body other than a red cloak that draped behind him, supported by the purple gem that indicated that he belonged to the king. The brown leather straps wrapped around him to support his sword, and his long boots were dark with the colour of the night. Smaz was a sight. Then the pain returned more so, and Smaz realized that he must find a doctor of sorts first, despite whatever cruel medicine they would give him. Anything but a banana. Holding his injured arm, Smaz slowly walked down to the end of the alley, sure that the police were now gone, and placed the box in his pouch on his main belt, for safe keeping.